I respect your choice. If one day, senior, you leave the blade sword sect with Su Li, I will give you a great fortune, a fortune you can't imagine. Duan Lingtian nodded solemnly to Su Li, and then looked at Sword 13, speaking unhurriedly. Uncle Feng Tian Wu, let's go. Immediately, Duan Lingtian called out to Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu, and then left the Blade Sword sect's residence together. After Duan Lingtian and the others left, the atmosphere in the Blade Sword sect's residence became somewhat oppressive. After a long while, sect leader, after thinking for a while, 13 has decided to leave. Sword 13 looked at the Blade Branch sect leader and said with a bow, from now on, the world will no longer have the person Sword 13. Su Li, let's go. After saying that, Sword 13 flew away. Su Li followed closely, not saying a word from beginning to end, only following his master's lead. Su Li and his master left the Blade Sword sect, but they did not chase after Duan Lingtian and the others. The direction they left in was different from Duan Lingtian and the others. Duan Lingtian and the others were heading south, and they were heading north. Su Li's master chose to leave, not because of the great fortune promised by Duan Lingtian, but completely following his heart. 3 figures left the Blade Sword sect and headed south all the way. Soon, they entered the 10 Great Dynasties area, entering the Great Ming Dynasty. Tian Wu's cultivation has also broken through to the Martial Emperor realm. The red-robed middle-aged man among the 3 looked at the woman in red beside him with a look of horror, his eyes filled with disbelief. In his opinion, this was simply too outrageous. How old was his daughter? And she was already a Martial Emperor expert? Even he, with his good talent and comprehension ability, was now only barely breaking through to the 8th level of the Void Transformation realm, comprehending the 9-fold high-rank sword concept. Uncle Feng, although I still have a sword profundity fragment in my hand, it has been comprehended by me. I'll take you to a place that will guarantee you directly comprehend the sword profundity. Duan Lingtian said to Feng Wudao. The Triple Royal Realm Sword Profundity Fragment from the Sword Emperor's treasury helped him comprehend the sword profundity in one fell swoop, and it was useless for others to take it. Like a glass of water, Duan Lingtian drank half a glass, leaving only half a glass. Others need to drink a whole glass of water to completely quench their thirst, so it is useless to get the half glass of water that Duan Lingtian drank. Oh, hearing Duan Lingtian talk about such a magical place, Feng Wudao immediately became interested. The place Duan Lingtian was talking about was undoubtedly the sword character in the canyon deep in the mountains where Xiongquan's hometown was located, which contained the sword Dao insights left by a guy named Feng Qingyang, who called himself Sword Saint. It just so happened that Feng Wudao also comprehended the sword intent, and had comprehended the sword intent to the 9-fold high rank. The first time you see that sword character, you will get great benefits. It is a very simple matter for Uncle Feng to comprehend the sword profundity. Duan Lingtian could be sure of this. Like Xiongquan back then, it was because he saw the sword character for the first time that he was able to comprehend the high-rank sword intent in one fell swoop. When he saw the sword character for the first time, his sword intent jumped from the 9-fold initial rank to the 5-fold high rank, a great improvement. Feng Tianwu was even more exaggerated. Comprehending the method of fire giving birth to sword can directly give birth to the same level of sword intent and sword profundity through fire intent, and even fire profundity. Therefore, Duan Lingtian was 100% sure that Feng Wudao would be no exception. Coming to that remote mountain range again, Duan Lingtian had a feeling of returning to an old place. The canyon was still the same as before, very quiet. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu entered the canyon, and were not attracted by the sword character on the mountain wall for a while, but Feng Wudao was undoubtedly recruited. Have I been here before? Feng Tianwu asked Duan Lingtian. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, then smiled and said, the method you use now to give birth to sword profundity from fire intent was mastered after seeing that sword character. Hearing this, Feng Tianwu looked at the sword character and said with a puzzled expression, it feels like it has a lot of information, but why do why is he like that? Feng Tianwu looked at Feng Wudao, who was stunned on the ground, and said, she wanted to say my father, but in the end, she didn't say it. Duan Lingtian heard Feng Tianwu's timely change of words, but he didn't care. Everything takes time, and Tianwu also needs time to accept her father. He's here for the first time. Back then, When you and I came here for the first time, it was about the same. Duan Lingtian smiled, as if he remembered the scene when Xiong Quan first brought him here. He still remembered. Back then, Xiong Quan stayed for the shortest time, followed by Feng Tianwu, and then him. He stayed for the longest time. I don't know how long Uncle Feng can last. Duan Lingtian glanced at Feng Wudao, guessing secretly, but he couldn't guess why. Let's wait until Uncle Feng wakes up. Tian Wu, the sword Dao insights that we absorbed and stored from this sword character last time have been comprehended and consumed more or less. We are about to leave the outer lands, so we can absorb as much as possible again, store it, and then slowly comprehend it in the future. Duan Lingtian said to Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu nodded, and then, under Duan Lingtian's guidance, began to absorb the sword Dao insights from the sword character. The obscure and difficult information was stored in her mind. Time passed quietly. After spending 10 days, Duan Lingtian felt that he could no longer absorb the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character, so he did not continue. To Duan Lingtian's surprise, Tian Wu was still absorbing. It seems that Tian Wu's last improvement of the sword profundity has comprehended and consumed a lot of the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character stored in her mind. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Because of this, Tian Wu needed to absorb more. Shaking his head, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged in the low sky and began to cultivate. 9 dragons wore venerable art, divine dragon transformation. While cultivating, Duan Lingtian did not forget to listen to all directions, and his mental energy was constantly extending out, vigilant of everything around him, not letting go of any corner. At some point, Feng Tianwu also stopped absorbing and storing the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character. Waking up, she saw Duan Lingtian cultivating, so she didn't disturb him, and sat cross-legged in the low sky to cultivate on her own. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lingtian felt a sharp aura and was awakened. Uncle Feng, have you comprehended the sword profundity? After being awakened, Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Wudao as soon as possible. He could feel that the sharp aura emanating from Feng Wudao's body was the aura of the sword profundity. I just woke up. It feels like something has changed. Feng Wudao had just woken up, and his face was still mixed with a bit of confusion. Try it, Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Yes. Feng Wudao nodded, and with a wave of his hand, Yuan force condensed into a sword, which then stabbed out. In an instant, a sharp sword gong flashed, emitting a burst of frightening aura. Wherever it passed, the airflow between the air moved, setting off a burst of slight sonic booms. As the sonic booms sounded, a wave of air flashed, and a burst of strong wind spread out, ravaging the entire canyon. At some point, Feng Tianwu, who was sitting cross-legged in the low sky to cultivate, was also awakened, and happened to see Feng Wudao's scene of testing the sword profundity. Whoosh! As Feng Wudao slashed out with his sword, the heaven and earth phenomenon corresponding to his cultivation level appeared first in the void realm above his head, and then the heaven and earth phenomenon corresponding to the sword profundity began to flash. 3,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Sword profundity, comparable to the power of the ancient horned dragon. Second level royal realm sword profundity. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up, and he quickly congratulated Feng Wudao. Congratulations, Uncle Feng. Say, second-level royal realm sword profundity. Even now, Feng Wudao still couldn't recover. He felt that he had only glanced at the sword character on the mountain wall, and his mind was unconsciously immersed in it. It seemed like a long time before he woke up. When he woke up, his 9-fold high-rank sword intent had transformed into second-level royal realm sword profundity, directly skipping the first-level royal realm sword profundity and spanning a whole level. Incredible! Incredible! Taking a deep breath, Feng Wudao's face was full of shock. What exactly is that sword character? How can it be so magical? Feng Wudao was shocked for a long time, and finally calmed down and asked curiously. It is a character left by a guy who calls himself Sword Saint. Uncle Feng can go there and take a look. There is a paragraph of words there, left by the person who left the sword character. Duan Lingtian pointed Feng Wudao to see the message from Sword Saint Feng Qingyang. After Feng Wudao read it, he couldn't help but feel shocked, only feeling that a mysterious door was slowly opening to him, and he wanted to enter it, but he was still far from enough. Originally, Duan Lingtian planned to let Feng Wudao absorb and store the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character, and then set off with him and Tian Wu to go to the inland. However, Feng Wudao refused. With my current strength, following you won't help much, but will only hold you back, so I won't go with you. This place is not bad. I want to stay here and study that sword character carefully, Feng Wudao said. At the beginning, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but persuade Feng Wudao, but later on, Feng Wudao was still indifferent, and Duan Lingtian could only respect his choice. If that's the case, I'll introduce someone to Uncle Feng by the way. While respecting Feng Wudao's choice, Duan Lingtian went to Xiong family village and brought Eru over to introduce him to Feng Wudao. After everything was settled, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu left the canyon, left the Great Han Dynasty, and headed north. Now a few months have passed. I think Xiong Quan should have broken through, Duan Lingtian murmured. After leaving the Han Dynasty, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu returned to the northern tomb and the Lu family. Still haven't broken through? Upon returning to his residence, Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy extended into Xiong Quan's room, and he immediately detected Xiong Quan's current state. Xiong Quan was currently at the final stage of breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm. With the medicinal power of the spirit fruit stimulating him, Xiong Quan should be able to complete his breakthrough in a few days at most. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. At once, Duan Lingtian realized he would have to wait a few more days, and he couldn't help but look at Feng Tianwu. Tianwu, go back to your room and rest for a few days. We'll depart after Xiong Quan breaks through. Okay. Feng Tianwu nodded obediently, flew down, and headed towards her room. When facing the group of maids in the mansion, her face was once again covered with a layer of frost, exuding an icy aura that kept people at a distance. Miss Tianwu, however, while the maids respectfully greeted her, they were also used to it. After Tianwu returned to her room, Duan Lingtian went to find Lu Rue, the head of the Lu family, and informed him of his imminent departure. Elder Duan, you are leaving? Although he had long guessed that Duan Lingtian would leave sooner or later and wouldn't stay in their small Lu family forever, Lu Rue hadn't expected this day to come so quickly. It left him a little flustered. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded, then said with a serious expression, Family head, during my time in the Lu family, I have been greatly cared for by you, the old family head, and all the elders. I will stay for a few more days, and during these days, I will help the family refine some Grade 1 pills and Grade 1 spirit weapons. Elder Duan, you are too kind. Hearing the first half of Duan Lingtian's words, Lu Rue quickly replied courteously. However, upon hearing the second half of Duan Lingtian's words, his eyes couldn't help but light up, and he looked at Duan Lingtian with anticipation. Elder Duan, when you refine pills, may I continue to observe? Of course, Duan Lingtian nodded, and then added, bring those several Grade 2 alchemist elders along as well. If my alchemy process can bring you some gains, it can be considered a gift from me to the family before I leave. Thank you, Elder Duan. I will go prepare the medicinal herbs and refining materials right away. Lu Rue left excitedly. Duan Lingtian sat in the main hall, quietly waiting. Of course, while waiting, he wasn't idle. 3 natural intent fragments appeared in his hand. He simultaneously comprehended and improved his fusion profundity, while also studying the sword Dao insights from the sword character in his mind. Inside his body, Yuan force surged, circulating continuously according to the cultivation method of the divine dragon transformation. The 9th change of the 9 dragons wore sovereign art, and the medicinal power of the nirvana pill followed him like a shadow. In the previous few months, Duan Lingtian had not deliberately cultivated, so the bottleneck leading to Martial Emperor Realm Stage 2 had not been broken. Boom, boom, boom. Now, the bottleneck, being impacted by the Yuan force fused with the medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, was on the verge of collapsing. Cultivating like this, it won't be long before I can successfully break through to Martial Emperor Realm Stage 2. Duan Lingtian was full of confidence in this. However, it was clearly impossible for him to cultivate peacefully like this, because Lu Rue quickly returned with a pile of materials, and with him were several Grade 2 alchemist elders of the Lu family. After Lu Rue and the Grade 2 alchemist elders greeted Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian began to refine pills. Whoosh! The dark golden pill fire flickered, merging into the quasi-emperor grade spirit weapon cauldron, and perfectly fusing with a pile of materials. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian's hands moved swiftly, employing profound alchemy techniques with ease, mesmerizing Lu Rue and his group. For an entire day and night, Duan Ling Tian did not stop for a moment, diligently refining pills. This was a gift he left for the Lu family before his departure, and he refined them with great care. In addition to an astonishing 10/10 success rate, the purity of each grade 1 pill was infinitely close to a perfect 99%. After a day and a night, Duan Ling Tian stopped, seeing that Lu Rue and the others had not yet recovered. Duan Ling Tian put down the pills and left, returning to his former residence. After returning, he used the refining materials given by Lu Rue to refine several grade 1 spirit weapons. After Xiong Quan completed his breakthrough to the Martial Emperor realm, he handed the several grade 1 spirit weapons to Lu Rue. By this time, 5 days had passed. Whoosh! Yuan force surged in Lu Rue's hand, merging into the spirit weapon in his grasp, unleashing an even stronger and more terrifying power, emitting waves of awe-inspiring aura. Above his head in the void, the power of heaven and earth surged, and a heaven and earth phenomenon appeared. First, 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, followed by another 1,800 ancient horned dragon phantoms, winding down, lifelike, bringing a visual shock. An increase by 90%. Lu Rue's pupils contracted, his face filled with shock and disbelief. One must know that an ordinary grade 1 spirit weapon was considered good if it could increase by 88%, but the one in his hand could increase by 90%, which was truly the best of the best. Elder Duan, the other few grade 1 spirit weapons. After a while, Lu Rue recovered and looked at the purple-clad youth who was leading the 3 people in front of him. The other few grade 1 spirit weapons are the same, increasing by 90%. Before Lu Rue could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the purple-clad youth. The purple-clad youth was none other than Duan Ling Tian. As for the 2 people beside him, they were Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan. Family head, please convey my greetings to the old family head and the 3 guardian elders. Now it's time for us to leave. Before Lu Rue could fully recover, Duan Ling Tian greeted him, then turned and left. Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan followed him like shadows. Elder Duan. When Lu Rue reacted, he found that the backs of Duan Ling Tian and the other 2 had gradually disappeared from his sight, and for a moment, he couldn't help but sigh. I wonder if I'll ever see Elder Duan again. Lu Rue sighed. I only hope that when Elder Duan becomes a Martial Emperor expert, and once again stands at the peak of Cloud-Soaring Continent, he will still remember that there is a Lu family in the Northern Tomb. Lu Rue silently hoped in his heart. After Duan Ling Tian and the other 2 left the Lu family, they traveled north, heading straight for the Weak Water Riverbank. To cross the Weak Water River, one must first reach the Weak Water Riverbank. Then, from that location, they would take a flying boat to cross the Weak Water River and reach the inland. Although, with the strength of Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu, and Xiong Quan, it was not impossible to cross the Weak Water River by physical means. But there was a certain risk involved. If I encounter a whirlpool in the Weak Water River, I would be fine. But Tianwu and Xiong Quan would be in danger. At that time, I could only save one person at most. Because of this, Duan Ling Tian decided to take a flying boat to the inland, even though the cost of the flying boat was extremely expensive. Along the way, Duan Ling Tian was not idle, introducing the Weak Water River to Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan. That Weak Water River, even a martial emperor swallowed by it would face certain death. After hearing about the terrifying nature of the Weak Water River, Xiong Quan's pupils constricted, his face filled with horror. He found it hard to imagine. How could a mere river be so terrifying? What, do you want to try it? Duan Ling Tian asked with a smile. Xiong Quan quickly shook his head upon hearing this. He certainly didn't want to die. He naturally believed Duan Ling Tian's words. The reason he questioned earlier was simply because he found it so incredible and hard to imagine. After hearing about the terrifying nature of the Weak Water River, Feng Tianwu's expression remained unchanged, but a hint of apprehension appeared in the depths of her autumn eyes. As time passed, Duan Ling Tian and the other 2 could see the water level appearing in the distance. Young master, is that the Weak Water River? looking at the water level that stretched as far as the eye could see, like a sea level. Xiongquan asked curiously. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded, but his expression was tense, as if he was distracted by something else. Not long after, the vast river in the distance, stretching as far as the eye could see, appeared before Duan Ling Tian and the other two, appearing extremely calm, without a single ripple. It was like a pool of stagnant water. Whoosh! Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian, who was flying forward, trembled violently, stopping midair, his expression becoming extremely solemn. Seeing Duan Ling Tian suddenly stop, Feng Tian Wu also stopped. Xiongquan, who had flown past them, immediately turned to look at Duan Ling Tian, asking with a puzzled expression, "Young master, what's wrong?" However, Duan Ling Tian ignored Xiongquan. He closed his eyes and stood there quietly. A quarter of an hour later, boom, Duan Ling Tian's body suddenly shook, and his purple robe fluttered. At this moment, within Duan Ling Tian's body, the Yuan force, fused with the medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, finally broke through the bottleneck leading to Martial Emperor Realm Stage 2, soaring past it. The Yuan force that passed the bottleneck underwent a drastic transformation in an instant, completely evolving. Martial Emperor Realm Stage 2. Now, Duan Ling Tian had successfully broken through to Martial Emperor Realm Stage 2, and his strength had greatly increased by a full 1,000 ancient horned dragon power. Combined with the amplification power of the Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit Sword, it was an increase of a full 2,000 ancient horned dragon power. Now, I should not encounter any opponents below Martial Emperor Realm Stage 7. As his thoughts stirred, Duan Ling Tian opened his eyes, a glint of light flashing in them, like two brilliant stars twinkling in the night sky. Let's go. Recovering, Duan Ling Tian saw Xiongquan looking at him with a worried expression, and Feng Tian Wu looking at him thoughtfully. He smiled and greeted them. Immediately, the three continued towards the weak water riverbank, where they could vaguely see many people waiting in the distance. Brother, are you three here to take the flying boat? Our Yin-Yang Sect's flying boat now only requires 20 high-grade primeval stones per person to purchase a boarding token. As soon as Duan Ling Tian and the other two arrived and stopped above the weak water riverbank, a person approached them, holding 3 exquisite tokens in his hand, and said with a smile to Duan Ling Tian. It was obvious to anyone with eyes that Duan Ling Tian was the leader of the three. Therefore, the middle-aged man holding 3 exquisite tokens, who claimed to be selling boat embarkation tokens, immediately singled him out and tried to sell him the tokens. Boat embarkation token? Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, glanced indifferently at the tokens in the middle-aged man's hand, and asked, "With this, we can board the Yin-Yang Sect's flying boat?" That's right. The middle-aged man's face lit up with a smile upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, as if he could already see a big fish about to bite. I heard that boarding the Yin-Yang Sect's flying boat from the weak water riverbank to the mainland costs 30 high-grade origin stones per person. Why is it only 20 high-grade origin stones per person from you? Duan Ling Tian looked at the middle-aged man with interest and asked, "This is a pre-sale, so it's a bit cheaper." The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged as he slowly said, "Buying now is cheaper than buying when the flying boat arrives. Each person can save 10 high-grade origin stones. I only have 3 left, which is perfect for the 3 of you. Miss this village, and you won't find this shop again." The middle-aged man reminded him at the end. Did they all buy it? Duan Ling Tian looked at a group of people not far away and asked curiously. Of course. The middle-aged man quickly nodded. Brother, what he's selling isn't a boat embarkation token at all. He specializes in swindling high-grade origin stones in this area. Don't believe him. Just then, a voice transmission formed by origin energy entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian immediately looked up and saw a kind-looking middle-aged man not far away nod at him, then hastily turn his head away. It was as if he had some reservations. At once, Duan Ling Tian understood. So, have you made up your mind? The middle-aged man looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked with a smile. In his opinion, this deal would certainly go through without any surprises. How many high-grade origin stones can you swindle in a day like this? Duan Ling Tian looked at the middle-aged man and asked calmly. The middle-aged man never expected that after waiting for so long, he would get such a question. His expression immediately changed, becoming extremely ugly. Boom. Just then, A loud bang attracted Duan Ling Tian's attention, causing his face to completely darken. What did he see? The kind-looking middle-aged man who had just kindly warned him was struck down by a gray-robed middle-aged man, and the rolling force engulfed the kind-looking middle-aged man. The next moment, the kind-looking middle-aged man's corpse fell, meddling in other people's business. The gray-robed middle-aged man spoke coldly, and at the same time, he transformed into a bolt of lightning, streaking directly towards the kind-looking middle-aged man's corpse to retrieve his spatial ring. The next moment, his figure moved again, landing steadily beside the middle-aged man in front of Duan Ling Tian. "Kid, don't you dare be like him." The gray-robed middle-aged man looked at Duan Ling Tian, his icy eyes flashing with a terrifying killing intent, ready to devour someone. When the kind-looking middle-aged man was killed, Duan Ling Tian noticed that although there were many people present, only a few turned to look, and then they all turned their heads away, no longer paying attention, as if they had never seen anything. It was a clear display of indifference, a classic case of not my problem, not my concern. Of course, Duan Ling Tian also knew that most of these people probably didn't want to get into trouble. He can be considered my benefactor. Duan Ling Tian's gaze returned, landing immediately on the gray-robed middle-aged man, and he said with a calm expression. At this point, Duan Ling Tian also realized that the two men in front of him were in cahoots. "Benefactor," the gray-robed middle-aged man smiled, a bright and wicked smile. "Do you know how many foolish busybodies die here every day? Benefactor, I advise you to be like them, and just wait patiently for the Yin-Yang sect's flying boat to arrive." The them he referred to was the group of people waiting for the flying boat. As for other matters, just pretend you saw nothing. After speaking, the gray-robed middle-aged man looked disdainfully at Duan Ling Tian, and then at the middle-aged man beside him who had been trying to sell Duan Ling Tian the boat embarkation token. "How unlucky. Let's wait for the next target." The latter nodded, gave Duan Ling Tian and his companions a cold glance, then flew away to wait for the next target. As for the gray-robed middle-aged man, he turned to go back into the crowd to continue monitoring anyone who dared to ruin his companion's business. Anyone who dared to ruin his companion's business, he would kill. Humph! Just then, a cold snort sounded. Accompanying this cold snort was the sound of a sword whistling. As soon as the sword whistle sounded, it abruptly stopped, a fleeting moment like a flash in the pan, as if it had never appeared. However, a bloody hole, a gruesome bloody hole, appeared on the back of the gray-robed middle-aged man's neck, continuously gushing blood. He was instantly killed. As the gray-robed middle-aged man's body was falling, a ghostly purple figure appeared beside him. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian raised his hand and removed the gray-robed middle-aged man's spatial ring, putting it away. You dare to kill him?" At this moment, the middle-aged man who had previously tried to trick Duan Ling Tian into buying fake boat embarkation tokens turned around and only saw Duan Ling Tian standing there, while his companion's corpse was falling. His first thought was that this purple-robed young man had killed his companion. "What, do you want to avenge him?" Duan Ling Tian looked up, observing the middle-aged man with interest, and asked calmly. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man's face darkened, but he dared not make any move. Although he and the gray-robed middle-aged man belonged to the same organization, the gray-robed middle-aged man's strength was much greater than his. He had already reached the 7th level of the Void Transformation stage. If the other party could even kill a 7th level Void Transformation stage martial artist, why would they fear him? A mere 6th level Void Transformation stage martial artist? You're dead. The middle-aged man glared at Duan Ling Tian, gritting his teeth in hatred. Do you know who we are? Do you know why they don't dare to offend us? As he spoke, the middle-aged man glanced at the group of people with their backs to him. Of course, at this point, many people had turned around to watch the commotion. When they saw the gray-robed middle-aged man killed by Duan Ling Tian, their faces were filled with shock. Someone actually dared to kill a member of the gold-swallowing organization. Many people exclaimed in surprise. He even dared to kill a member of the gold-swallowing organization. This young man is dead for sure. Many people sighed. However, his strength is indeed impressive. That gold-swallowing organization member was a 7th level Void Transformation stage martial artist, yet he was killed by him. What if he killed him? When the strong members of the gold-swallowing organization arrive, he will still not escape death. That's right. The leader of the gold-swallowing organization is a Martial Emperor stage existence, and he has 10 guardians under him, each of whom is a peak void stage expert. This young man is probably in for some trouble. At this moment, many people looked at Duan Ling Tian with pity, not believing that he would have a good end. Gold swallowing organization, Martial Emperor? Duan Ling Tian heard every word from the surrounding people, but he didn't care. As long as it wasn't in existence above the 7th level of the Martial Emperor stage, he was not afraid. Even a 6th level Martial Emperor stage expert, he was confident he could instantly kill in one move. This was Duan Ling Tian's confidence. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian heard a series of whistling sounds from all directions in the sky. It was a series of figures that had disappeared into the clouds, fleeing rapidly. Are they also members of the gold swallowing organization? For a moment, Duan Ling Tian began to secretly guess. Little brother, hurry and escape. Just then, a venerable voice transmission formed by origin energy entered Duan Ling Tian's ears, urging him. The gold swallowing organization is not someone you can afford to provoke. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow and quickly spotted an old, kind-faced figure in the crowd. It was an old man with a benevolent expression, kindly warning him. Duan Ling Tian's spiritual energy extended outwards, and he immediately detected the old man's cultivation. 9th level of the void transformation stage, much stronger than that gray-robed middle-aged man. Gold swallowing organization. Having learned from previous experience, Duan Ling Tian didn't dare to stare directly at the old man, fearing that the old man would suffer misfortune because of him. However, he still couldn't help but ask curiously, what kind of organization is that? The Gold Swallowing Organization is an organization that specializes in swindling martial artists' origin stones here at the Weakwater River Bank. They dare not kill the martial artists who come here, but they will use other methods to trick them out of their origin stones. The old man continued to explain via origin energy transmission. They dare not kill the martial artists here. Duan Ling Tian was startled. Why? He had already had this question in his mind before. The gray-robed middle-aged man and the middle-aged man who tried to trick him into buying a fake boat embarkation token were quite strong. Logically, they could have killed many of the martial artists present and seized more origin stones. However, they didn't do that. Even after knowing that he had understood everything and could no longer be deceived, they didn't bother him further. They only killed the person who had tipped him off. From beginning to end, they had no intention of harming him. Now, upon hearing the old man's words, Duan Ling Tian realized that they dared not do so because they had reservations. As for what those reservations were, Duan Ling Tian really wanted to know. Little brother, since you can come here, you should also know that this is where the Yin-Yang sect's flying boat picks up people to go to the mainland, the old man said. Duan Ling Tian nodded. The Yin-Yang sect's flying boat comes once in a while to pick up those who want to go to the mainland. Everyone who boards the flying boat has to pay 30 high-grade origin stones. The old man continued. This is the Yin-Yang sect's business for earning and collecting origin stones here. If the people of the Gold Swallowing Organization were to kill people indiscriminately here, it would be tantamount to cutting off the Yin-Yang sect's financial lifeline. Because of this, they dare not kill people indiscriminately. Of course, if it's someone who is blind and actively offends them, like the person who warned you earlier, they won't show mercy. Hearing the old man's words, Duan Ling Tian came to a realization. No wonder the other party didn't dare to kill people indiscriminately to seize more origin stones. It turned out they were afraid of offending the Yin-Yang sect. Thinking about it, it made sense. The Yin-Yang sect was, after all, a first-rate faction of the inland. If they truly wanted to wipe out the Gold Swallowing Organization, it would be as easy as turning over a hand. Once the Yin-Yang sect took action, even if the Gold Swallowing Organization wanted to flee, it would be impossible. Little brother, you should leave quickly. Besides the person you just killed and the one who deceived you, there are many others from the Gold Swallowing Organization hiding in the shadows. They must have gone to report this by now. As the old man advised Duan Ling Tian, he continued, the Gold Swallowing Organization's base is nearby. It won't be long before 1 or 2 of their 10 great protectors arrive. Those are Void Realm peak existences. Thank you for the reminder. However, I still want to stay and watch the excitement. Duan Ling Tian smiled, not taking it to heart. Void Realm peak? Watch the excitement. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, the corner of the old man's mouth twitched. He then shook his head, feeling as though everything he had just said was in vain. However, he didn't try to persuade Duan Ling Tian further. He had done everything he could. The remaining matters were not for him to manage. Just as the old man had said, before long, about half an hour later, 3 rapid whistling sounds of wind came from the distant horizon. In the blink of an eye, 3 people arrived at the bank of the Weakwater River. These were 3 old men. Although they were old, they were full of vigor, and their cultivation bases were clearly extraordinary. Greetings, 3 protectors. When the 3 old men appeared, the middle-aged man, who held 3 exquisite tokens and had previously failed to deceive Duan Lingtian, hurriedly bowed and greeted them, his words filled with humility. 3 protectors. Following the appearance of the 3 old men and hearing the middle-aged man's respectful address, the expressions of everyone present became solemn. The gold-swallowing organization only had 10 protectors in total, and 3 had arrived at once. Those who hadn't previously turned around to watch the excitement now also turned one by one, following the gaze of the majority to look at the 3 newly arrived old men. Who killed our member of the gold-swallowing organization? One of the old men asked in a deep voice. Protector Lu, it's him. It's him. The middle-aged man immediately pointed his finger at Duan Lingtian and roared somewhat hysterically. Was it you who killed someone from our gold-swallowing organization? The old man's sharp, blade-like gaze fell upon Duan Lingtian as he asked in a heavy tone. After Duan Lingtian gave the old man a faint glance, he ignored him completely, as if he were totally disregarding him, let alone answering him. Protector Lu, look at how arrogant he is. He actually dares to ignore you to your face. The middle-aged man stood to the side, adding fuel to the fire for fear that there wouldn't be enough chaos. The old man's expression was extremely unsightly, but he wasn't so impulsive as to directly attack Duan Lingtian. He continued to ask in a deep voice, "What is your excellency's background? Just a nobody. You don't need to have any concerns." Duan Lingtian finally spoke, looking casual and speaking with total indifference. A nobody? Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the old man was stunned, but he wouldn't believe Duan Lingtian's words no matter what. Would a nobody dare to kill members of their gold-swallowing organization? Would a nobody dare to ignore him like this? Your Excellency, our gold-swallowing organization conducts business on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. No matter who it is, as long as they are unwilling, our gold-swallowing organization will not force them. Isn't it a bit much for you to kill our man? Another old man stared at Duan Lingtian and asked coldly, "Willing buyer, willing seller?" Hearing the old man's words, Duan Lingtian laughed as if he had heard the world's biggest joke. Is it not so? The last old man snorted, his gaze toward Duan Lingtian flickering with a cold light, looking as if he wanted to devour him. If we set aside the despicable, deceitful behavior of your gold-swallowing organization, saying it that way isn't exactly wrong. Duan Lingtian nodded and spoke with deep meaning. In that case, why did your excellency kill our man? Could it be you think our gold-swallowing organization is easy to bully? The old man asked in a deep voice, his voice cold, as if it were coming from an ice cave. When I killed him, I had no idea about any gold-swallowing organization. Are you satisfied with this answer? Duan Lingtian looked deeply at the old man and responded neither humbly nor arrogantly, ending with a counter-question. You're looking for death. Duan Lingtian's casual attitude completely enraged the 3 old men. After exchanging glances, they all let out a loud shout. At the same time, the origin power in their bodies surged, and their concept followed like shadows. Their figures moved, transforming into 3 streaks of rapid lightning as they shot toward Duan Lingtian with a menacing momentum. As soon as the 3 of them moved, they used their full strength and attacked Duan Lingtian's vital points, clearly intending to kill him with a single strike. Facing the attack of the 3, Duan Lingtian stood there quietly without any movement. His expression remained calm, without any panic. Has he been scared silly? This was the thought in the minds of most onlookers. Sigh. The old man who had previously warned Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh upon seeing this scene. If this young man had listened to him earlier and stayed far away from this place, how could he have ended up in such a state? However, in the next moment, the old man's pupils suddenly constricted, as if he had seen something incredible. A hint of horror was vaguely mixed on his face. Humph! A cold snort rang out like a clap of thunder, shocking many people present so much that their hearts shook and their blood surged. Whoosh! At the same time, most people present only heard a fleeting whistle of a sword. In the next moment, they saw that the 3 old men who were charging menacingly toward the youth in purple robes now had an extra, neat sword scar on their throats, as if they had been slashed by a single sword. The 3 neat sword scars continued to expand, and then dazzling blood sprayed out. The eyes of the 3 old men finally dimmed, and their bodies lost control, carried forward by inertia. They continued to crash toward Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! At this moment, a ghost-like figure appeared in front of Duan Lingtian, as if he had foreknowledge, and then he raised his hand and began to brandish a sword. Whoosh! 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 A series of piercing sword whistles rang out, deafening to the ears. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the bodies of the 3 old men were enveloped by intersecting sword lights, as if swept up by a net of swords with nowhere to escape. A moment later, the 3 old men vanished, leaving only blood spraying through the air. Boom! At this time, as the 3-foot green edge formed from origin power in the hand of the figure in front of Duan Lingtian dissipated, he formed a fist and punched out into the air. Suddenly, a loud bang like a thunderclap spread out, and waves of invisible air surged. The airwaves swept out, kicking up gusts of wild wind that blew away the blood spraying in the air. Not only did it not touch Duan Lingtian's body, it didn't even touch the body of the person standing in front of him. Quiet. The scene was deathly silent. At the same time, everyone's gaze fell collectively on the spot where Duan Lingtian was. More accurately, on the figure in front of Duan Lingtian. From the moment this person acted until now, he was as fast as lightning. Even the power of heaven and earth didn't have time to stir, let alone gather into a heaven and earth phenomenon. 3 pieces of trash, you dare to attack my young master? You're looking for death. Hearing this voice, the person standing in front of Duan Lingtian was none other than Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan had not only achieved a breakthrough in his cultivation to the Martial Emperor realm 1st level, but he had also further comprehended the sword Dao insights contained in the word sword left behind by the sword Saint Feng Qingyang. Now, he had already comprehended the triple stage Emperor realm sword profundity. With his strength, killing 3 Void Realm peak martial artists who hadn't even stepped into the Martial Emperor realm was as simple as could be. A single encounter was enough. And in fact, he had indeed accomplished it. In a single encounter, he had killed the 3 great protectors of the Gold Swallowing Organization. The Gold Swallowing Organization had a total of 10 great protectors, all of whom were Void Realm peak martial artists, and these 3 were naturally no exception. From the moment he acted to the killing of the 3, not only did Xiong Quan not trigger the power of heaven and earth to gather into a heaven and earth phenomenon, but even the 3 protectors of the Gold Swallowing Organization didn't have time to trigger the power of heaven and earth. Xiong Quan's speed was too fast, ridiculously fast. Martial Emperor expert. Soon, someone reacted and cried out in surprise. For a moment, Xiong Quan became the focus of the scene, but soon, everyone's gaze fell without exception on Duan Lingtian, simply because they remembered the sentence Xiong Quan had inadvertently said just now. This Martial Emperor expert called this youth in purple robes, young master. Heavens, a Martial Emperor expert as a follower. Just who is this youth in purple robes? His background, if there are no surprises, is definitely at the level of a first-rate faction. Many people discussed animatedly. When they looked at Duan Lingtian again, their gazes were completely different. Now, Duan Lingtian had become incredibly mysterious in their eyes. As for Duan Lingtian's previous actions, they no longer felt there was any problem. Flee. The middle-aged man who had previously tried to deceive the 3 of them didn't dare to delay the moment he regained his senses. Moving his body, he hurriedly fled at high speed. Now, he only hoped to leave this place as quickly as possible. In that case, he might still be able to survive. But could he escape? The answer was no. Whoosh. As Xiong Quan raised his hand, a condensed sword light flashed by, piercing through the back of the fleeing middle-aged man with the force of dry weeds being crushed, killing him with ease. Xiong Quan, you've actually comprehended the triple stage sword profundity? This time, Duan Lingtian finally saw the extraordinary nature of the sword profundity permeating Xiong Quan's origin power and couldn't help but ask with a face full of surprise. When did you comprehend it? Hee. Hearing Duan Lingtian's inquiry, Xiong Quan gave a silly laugh. I just comprehended it a short while ago. Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan were chatting here, but it caused the gazes of those present toward Duan Lingtian to shift constantly, as more people were curious about Duan Lingtian's identity. The three protectors are dead. Go back and report to the leader. There's a Martial Emperor expert. In the shadows, more people left. The headquarters of the gold-swallowing organization was located in the mountains not far from Weakwater Riverbank. Leader, a startled shout, echoing from the sky, broke the tranquility of the mountains. Accompanying the shout was a swift figure. Moments later, a person rose into the air, appearing before the newcomer. What's the matter? Why such a panic? Guardian Tian. The person who had rushed back from outside respectfully greeted the elder. Then, with a look of terror, said, Guardian Lu. Guardian Lu and the others have been killed. What? The person who had just ascended was an old man. Hearing the newcomer's words, his face changed drastically. How could Guardian Lu and the others be dead? Didn't they go to deal with the person who killed our gold-swallowing organization members? Yes, but Guardian Lu and the other two guardians were killed by a subordinate of that person. The newcomer said with a bitter expression. Subordinate? Are you sure? The old man's face darkened. He and Guardian Lu, along with two others, were among the 10 great guardians of the gold-swallowing organization, all at the Void Realm peak. 9th level Void Transformation Martial Artists, and each had comprehended 2 or more 9th level Void Transformation profundities. And now, Guardian Lu and the two others, whose strength was no less than his own, were all killed, and they died at the hands of a subordinate of the person who killed their gold-swallowing organization members? Yes. The newcomer nodded with absolute certainty. To be able to kill Guardian Lu and the other two, that person's subordinate must be at least at the Martial Emperor realm. A Martial Emperor realm subordinate? This matter must be decided by the leader. The old man took a deep breath, no longer paying attention to the newcomer, and then, like a flash of lightning, shot into the depths of the mountains. Within the mountains, in an extremely secluded area, stood a series of independent buildings. Although these buildings were situated in the complex terrain of the mountains, they were meticulously arranged. Leader. Moments later, the old man arrived in front of the largest building and respectfully spoke. Whoosh. Almost as soon as the old man's voice faded, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of the building and asked indifferently, Guardian Tian, what is it? Leader. Guardian Lu and the others are all dead. Guardian Tian said with a bitter smile. The one Guardian Tian referred to as leader was, of course, the leader of the gold-swallowing organization, an old man with gray hair and a large mole on his chin. Hearing Guardian Tian's words, his face sank. It seems the opponent is more troublesome than we imagined. Indeed, Guardian Tian's bitter smile deepened. The person who came back to report said that the opponent never made a move from beginning to end. The one who acted was just a subordinate by his side. Subordinate. The gold-swallowing organization leader's pupils contracted. You mean, the subordinates by that person's side are all Martial Emperor realm existences? Are you sure? The person who came back to report said so. Guardian Tian nodded. How is that possible? The gold-swallowing organization leader's eyes flickered with a sharp light, and he muttered, subordinates by his side are all Martial Emperor powerhouses. That person, you are the leader of the gold-swallowing organization? Before the gold-swallowing organization leader could finish his whisper, he was interrupted by a calm voice. The voice came from the sky, which instantly caused the leader's face to change drastically, and he hastily looked up. Only then did he realize, unbeknownst to him, for figures had appeared above him. One of the abducted individuals he recognized as one of their gold-swallowing organization members responsible for monitoring the Weakwater Riverbank from outside. The other three were a purple-clad youth and a red-clad woman, walking side by side in front. Behind the two, closely followed a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance, someone who would be impossible to find if thrown into a crowd. The middle-aged man followed behind the two, just like their shadow. Leader, help! And just then, the gold-swallowing organization member who had brought the three to the headquarters flew down, rushing straight towards the gold-swallowing organization leader's location, as if seeking protection. Betraying the organization die, Guardian Tian, who was nearby, roared, raising his hand. With a single palm strike, he killed the newcomer. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The commotion here was significant, and soon many more people arrived, all members who had remained at the gold-swallowing organization's headquarters. Among them, the first to arrive were 6 old men. Leader, after the 6 old men arrived, they respectfully bowed to the gold-swallowing organization leader. Moments later, one of the old men looked at the 3 figures standing in the air, looking down at them, and coldly shouted, "Where did these brats come from? daring to trespass into our gold-swallowing organization. Xiongquan. Facing the old man's astonished shout, the purple-clad youth standing in front of the three spoke calmly. Your Excellency. The gold-swallowing organization leader's face changed, but a rampant yuan force surged from his body, turning into a bluish-green power moments later, clearly infused with the profundity of water. Around the bluish-green power, streaks of purple lightning and azure gale were clearly intertwined. 2 ninth-level void transformation profundities. Before the gold-swallowing organization leader could even speak, Xiongquan had already made his move. A sword, shimmering with flowing light, appeared out of thin air in Xiongquan's hand, and then he swooped down. Apart from the leader of the gold-swallowing organization, the other 7 great guardians of the gold-swallowing organization could not even clearly see Xiongquan's movements. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In an instant, a series of piercing sword cries rang out, like a woven sword net, sword light raining down overwhelmingly, engulfing the 8 individuals, including the leader of the gold-swallowing organization. Escape! The gold-swallowing organization leader roared, a thick broadsword appearing in his hand. Man and sword moved as one, meeting Xiongquan while not forgetting to warn the other 7. The other 7 realized something was wrong when Xiongquan disappeared from their sight. Hearing the torrential sword cries, a chill involuntarily rose in their hearts, a coldness that started from their feet and shot straight to their heads. Now, hearing their leader's warning, the 7 men's faces changed, and they scattered in a hurry to escape. Buzz, 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 buzz. Streaks of azure blade light, entwined with purple lightning and azure gale, rose into the sky, emitting a series of sharp auras, as if they could tear the air apart. Moments later, they collided with the overwhelming sword light that swept down. The overwhelming sword net formed by the intertwining sword light enveloped the streaks of azure blade light, like a closing fishing net, with the latter being the fish. Boom, 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 boom. A series of loud bangs rang out one after another, as the sword net suppressed the streaks of azure blade light. Moments later, the blade light was completely suppressed. The sword net merely peeled off a layer, its remaining power undiminished, continuing to descend. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Wherever the sword light passed, apart from the gold-swallowing organization leader and 3 guardians who managed to retreat in time, the bodies of the other 4 were severed one by one, scattered on the ground, dead beyond dead. At this moment, more members of the gold-swallowing organization arrived one after another. When they saw the scene before them, their faces all changed drastically. As their expressions changed, they all looked at the middle-aged man standing in the air with terrified eyes. It was this man who, by himself, suppressed their leader and 7 guardians, killing 4 of the guardians. Soon, their pupils couldn't help but contract again. Young master, only because they saw the middle-aged man, who was incredibly powerful in their eyes, after suppressing their leader and 7 guardians, put away his hand and respectfully looked at the purple-clad youth, as if waiting for his next instruction. The middle-aged man's respectful address to the purple-clad youth made everyone present feel a tingling sensation on their scalps. Buzz, and just then, a piercing saber cry rang out, as the gold-swallowing organization leader, while the middle-aged man turned to look at the purple-clad youth, struck like lightning. The surging azure saber light, surrounded by purple lightning and azure gale, shot straight towards the middle-aged man with immense momentum. Its speed was so fast that the middle-aged man's face changed, and he had no time to react. His strength, compared to the leader of the gold-swallowing organization, was not much stronger, and now being ambushed completely unprepared, he was momentarily unable to cope. Whoosh! In a flash of lightning, just as the saber light, as if carrying the force to split a mountain, was about to land on Xiongquan, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of Xiongquan. He blocked the surging saber light for him. Buzz! The saber light fell, striking hard against the newcomer's body. Boom, 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 boom. When the saber light touched the newcomer's body, it was as if it had struck something unshakable, emitting a series of deafening roars. Air currents rolled, and fierce winds swept, causing the surrounding flowers, plants, and trees to sway. The robes of everyone present were also blown by the wind, flapping loudly. No, impossible. Soon, the gold-swallowing organization leader, who had launched the sneak attack, was the first to react. His face changed drastically. His pupils contracted to the extreme, as if he had seen something unbelievable. In the distance, as the saber light dissipated, a purple figure was revealed. The purple-clad youth stood there, with a five-colored divine dragon subtly moving around him. As the saber light disappeared, its speed also slowed down, revealing itself to everyone's eyes. Wherever the five-colored divine dragon passed, it formed a protective shield, protecting the purple-clad youth within. Nine Dragons' body protection. The identity of the purple-clad youth was also revealed. It was none other than Duan Ling Tian. Only in the Nine Dragons' war sovereign art, cultivated by Duan Ling Tian, was there such a defensive martial skill as Nine Dragons' body protection. Although it was only at the entry level, it was enough to withstand the full force attack of an ordinary martial emperor realm martial artist. Leave no one alive. Soon, Duan Ling Tian's gaze turned cold, and he spoke softly, without any emotion. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, Xiong Quan, who was already enraged and ready to strike, moved. And everyone, including the gold-swallowing organization leader, had their faces changed drastically, turning to flee. But could they escape? Moments later, the gold-swallowing organization leader, who had lost all will to fight after witnessing Duan Ling Tian's terrifying power, died at Xiong Quan's hands. The others were no exception. This gold-swallowing organization has been accumulating wealth at the Weak Water Riverbank for many years. I imagine they've amassed quite a few top-grade origin stones. Duan Ling Tian raised his hand and collected the gold-swallowing organization leader's spatial ring. After the storage ring was in his hands, Duan Ling Tian eagerly performed the blood-binding ritual to make it his own. After making it his own, Duan Ling Tian's eyes suddenly lit up as he looked inside. The high-grade yuan stones inside. There must be at least 3,000 of them, right? Over 3,000 high-grade yuan stones. One must know that even all the high-grade yuan stones carried by the Martial Emperor experts of the three major second-rate factions in the northern desert region combined only amounted to a few hundred. They couldn't compare to over 3,000 high-grade yuan stones at all. After putting away the storage ring in his hand, Duan Ling Tian then collected the storage rings of the other 7 gold-swallowing organization protectors one by one, adding the 3 storage rings from the previous gold-swallowing organization protectors. There were about 500 high-grade yuan stones in total across the 10 storage rings. Although far less than the wealth held by the gold-swallowing organization leader, it was still a considerable amount. Now, all the high-grade yuan stones I have add up to about 4,000. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Yuan stones are the most widely used currency on the Yunxiao continent and are extremely useful. They can be used to aid cultivation, to inscribe inscriptions, and even to set up inscription arrays. Unless it's a second-rate faction that has been passed down for 10,000 years, like the Biling Lu family and Biling O family. An ordinary second-rate faction, even if they gathered all their high-grade yuan stones, might not have as many as I do now. Duan Ling Tian was certain of this. The gold-swallowing organization must have been swindling high-grade yuan stones by the Weak Water River for some time. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to gather so many high-grade yuan stones. Many things were not hard for Duan Ling Tian to guess. In any case, this harvest was good. Duan Ling Tian's face broke into a brilliant smile, and he looked at Xiong Quan beside him. Xiong Quan, collect the storage rings of the remaining people. See if there's anything worth taking. Yes. Xiong Quan respectfully responded, then got busy. Duan Ling Tian raised his hand again and took out the profundity fragment from the gold-swallowing organization leader's body. A first-level Martial Emperor Realm Water Profound Truth fragment. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian seemed to sense something. He looked up at the distant sky and frowned. Who's there? Whoosh. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, the clouds in the sky rippled. A black bird flew out, flapping its wings, and in a flash, it darted to the other side, disappearing from Duan Ling Tian's sight. However, Duan Ling Tian's attention was not on the bird. His gaze remained fixed on the clouds in the sky. There was someone there. The bird from earlier was just a smokescreen deliberately released by the other party, intending to slip through. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian's figure moved and disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was high in the sky. Whoosh! Just as he appeared, Duan Ling Tian saw an old man hidden behind the clouds. The old man flicked his hand, and a streak of light shot out, disappearing in a flash. Communication jade slip. Duan Lingtian's expression changed. A communication jade slip is a jade slip inscribed with numerous inscriptions and inscription arrays, capable of recording and transmitting information to others. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian's figure moved, chasing in the direction the communication jade slip had departed, but he couldn't even see its shadow. Immediately, Duan Lingtian's face darkened. He knew that it was now impossible for him to pursue and intercept that communication jade slip. For a moment, he could only choose to return. When he returned, the old man was already gone. Trying to escape? Duan Lingtian sneered, his figure darting again, and in a flash, he blocked the old man who hadn't escaped far. You, a Martial Emperor realm first-level martial artist, want to escape in front of me? Duan Lingtian blocked the old man, his gaze filled with disdain. Who exactly are you? Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted coldly as he asked in a deep voice. If I tell you, will you not kill me? The old man took a deep breath, looking at Duan Lingtian with lingering fear, and asked, That depends on whether your answer can satisfy me. Duan Lingtian said indifferently, I am from the Yin-Yang sect. The old man took a deep breath and said, Yin-Yang sect. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized the old man. Are you sure you're from the Yin-Yang sect? I'm telling you, someone just now impersonated a member of the Yin-Yang sect. Do you know what happened to him? I saw it, he died. The old man said, It seems you've been following us all the way from the Weak-Water River bank. Duan Lingtian's narrowed eyes gleamed sharply. Yes, the old man did not deny it. Since you are from the Yin-Yang sect, then let me ask you, do you know if there are two female disciples in your Yin peak of the Yin-Yang sect, namely Fei and Kier? Duan Lingtian stared intently at the old man, asking in a calm tone, You even know those two personal disciples of our Yin peak's vice peak master? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the old man looked surprised. Yin peak vice peak master? Personal disciples. Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow, vaguely guessing that the Yin peak vice peak master was probably the elder sister Qin Xiang, the peak master of Yaoguang Peak of the Seven-Star Sword sect, had mentioned. She was also the female expert who had taken his two fiancés back then. The two people you mentioned are indeed the two personal disciples of our Yin peak's vice peak master. Also, I heard that Kier is to marry the Yang peak master's son in half a year. The old man nodded, and when he mentioned the Yang peak master later, his face was full of respect. Boom. The latter half of the old man's words, upon reaching Duan Lingtian's ears, was like a thunderclap, making Duan Lingtian's face turn alternately pale and green. What did you say? You said Kier is to marry your Yang peak master's son. Duan Lingtian's eyes were tinged with crimson as he stared intently at the old man, asking in a deep voice. Yes, yes. Although he didn't know why Duan Lingtian reacted so strongly, the old man didn't dare to be slow and quickly responded. What kind of joke was this? He had clearly seen the methods of the person before him just now. The gold-swallowing organization leader, whose strength was comparable to his, failed to harm the person in front of him in the slightest, even with a full-force attack. Most importantly, a single attendant behind the person in front of him had the strength to wipe out the entire gold-swallowing organization. Even without the person in front of him acting, if just his attendant made a move, he would surely die. Therefore, facing the person in front of him, he naturally dared not hesitate. Impossible. Duan Lingtian roared, his elemental chi surging throughout his body, then transforming into five-colored power, like five-colored flames constantly rising, and finally forming a sword shape. Whoosh! In the void realm, the power of heaven and earth surged, converging into a heaven and earth phenomenon. Two ancient azure dragon phantoms appeared immediately, occupying half the sky, emanating waves of terrifying aura, bringing visual shock. In addition, thousands of ancient horned dragon phantoms also appeared, but compared to the two ancient azure dragon phantoms, they seemed insignificant. Two power of the ancient azure dragon. Although he knew the youth in purple robes in front of him was very strong, the old man never expected him to be so strong enough to make him tremble with fear. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the old man's face changed drastically. The next moment, he only felt a gust of wind coming towards him, and then the youth in purple robes was in front of him. Whoosh! With bloodshot eyes, as if having lost his mind, Duan Lingtian's hand shot out like lightning, gripping the old man's neck. Power surged in his hand, dispersing the old man's elemental chi that was about to burst forth. You just said Kier is to marry your Yang Peak Master's son? Duan Lingtian asked in a deep voice. Yes, yes. At once, the old man realized that the youth in purple robes must have a close relationship with Kier, the personal disciple of the In Peak Vice Peak Master. Fearing that the other party might impulsively strangle him, he quickly recounted some things he had heard. I heard that Kier originally refused, but the Yang Peak Master captured Li Fei and said if she didn't marry, he would kill Li Fei. The old man finished, his face flushed, struggling to speak. Towards the end, he looked at Duan Lingtian with a pleading expression. As soon as the old man's words fell, the crimson in Duan Lingtian's eyes gradually receded, and his restless aura calmed down. At the same time, he released the hand gripping the old man's neck. At this point, Duan Lingtian calmed down. Kier was not willingly marrying that Yang Peak Master's son. What exactly happened? Aren't they personal disciples of the In Peak Vice Peak Master? Is the In Peak Vice Peak Master not intervening in this matter? Duan Lingtian asked in a deep voice. It's not that she isn't intervening, but that she can't. The old man moved his neck and slowly said, the In Peak Vice Peak Master and the In Peak Master have been severely injured since returning from a long journey a year ago. They are still in secluded cultivation in the In Peak Forbidden Land to heal. It is said that because of this matter, the In Peak Vice Peak Master's eldest personal disciple, Yang Shui, has repeatedly forced her way into the Forbidden Land, but always came back empty-handed. Towards the end, the old man sighed. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian's face darkened again. Yang Peak Master. At the same time, a cold, man-eating killing intent emanated from his body. When will your Yin-Yang sect's flying boat arrive? Can I reach the Yin-Yang sect within half a year? Duan Lingtian looked at the old man and asked coldly. In another half a month, our Yin-Yang sect's flying boat will arrive. By flying boat, if there are no mishaps, it will take 3 months to reach the inland, to our Yin-Yang sect. The old man spoke truthfully. He was truly afraid of the youth in purple robes in front of him now. This was an expert who could unleash 2 power of the ancient azure dragon. Killing him would be as easy as slaughtering a chicken or cutting grass. Now, he only hoped that the other party would spare his life for his cooperation. Hearing that he could reach the Yin-Yang sect in time, Duan Lingtian breathed a sigh of relief. Here, Feier, wait for me. I will come to save you soon. As for those who harmed you, I will make them pay the price. Duan Lingtian looked in the direction of the inland, wishing he could rush to the 2 little girls' sides now to help them escape their predicament. What information was contained in the communication jade slip you just released? Taking a deep breath and slightly suppressing the anger in his heart, Duan Lingtian looked at the old man again. It's nothing, just information recording the destruction of the gold-swallowing organization. That transmission jade slip was sent to our other Yin-Yang sect disciples on the banks of the Weakwater River. The old man spoke truthfully. Immediately after, from the old man's mouth, Duan Lingtian learned that he was actually the person in charge of the Yin-Yang sect stationed on the banks of the Weakwater River in the southern outer land. There were 3 people in total stationed by the Weakwater River. As a martial artist at the Martial Emperor realm 1st level, he was the leader of the 3. So, the actions of the gold-swallowing organization were all witnessed by you? Duan Lingtian asked. Yes, the old man nodded. Someone impersonated your Yin-Yang sect disciples to sell fake boat entry tokens, and you just watched without interfering? Duan Lingtian asked again. Anyway, those high-grade yuan stones would eventually end up in our hands. So why should we bother? The old man said nonchalantly. What do you mean? Duan Lingtian failed to react for a moment. On the banks of this Weakwater River, over the years, there have been countless organizations similar to the gold-swallowing organization. We generally let them be at first, and once the high-grade yuan stones in their hands accumulate to a certain extent, we wipe them out and seize the high-grade yuan stones from them. However, this time you beat us to it. As the old man finished, a bitter smile appeared on his face. I see. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden realization, and at the same time, as if remembering something, he asked, so, by doing this, I have essentially infringed upon the interests of your Yin-Yang sect. That is correct. The old man nodded. Do you want to take those high-grade yuan stones back? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, looking at the old man with great interest as he asked. I wouldn't dare. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, The old man panicked instantly, hurriedly shaking his head to state his position, deeply afraid that Duan Lingtian would misunderstand. What a joke, seizing high-grade yuan stones from this person's hands, unless he was tired of living. Otherwise, even if he were beaten to death, he wouldn't dare to do such a thing. You might not dare, but once your Yin-Yang sect's flying boat arrives, the person escorting the flying boat should not be so hesitant once they learn I have high-grade yuan stones, right? Duan Lingtian gave the old man a deep look and asked, the strongest person escorting our Yin-Yang sect's flying boat is only at the Martial Emperor realm 4th level. If he knew of your strength, senior, he naturally wouldn't dare to provoke you. The old man said with a bitter smile. Moreover, with your ability to display the power of the ancient Azure Dragon, plus 5,000 power of the ancient Horn Dragon without using a spiritual artifact, you are clearly in existence at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. Our Yin-Yang sect could not possibly offend you, senior, for the sake of those high-grade yuan stones. As the old man said this, the bitter smile on his face grew even more pronounced, displaying 2 power of the ancient Azure Dragon plus 5,000 power of the ancient Horn Dragon without using a spiritual artifact. Such strength was 90% likely to be in existence at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. A Martial Emperor realm 7th level expert, with their full yuan power exploding, is comparable to the power of one ancient Azure Dragon. Ordinary Martial Emperor realm 7th level experts generally comprehend 1 7th level Emperor realm profound truth, plus 2 first or second level Emperor realm profound truths. The former is comparable to 8,000 power of the ancient Horn Dragon. The latter, added together, is comparable to 4 or 5,000 power of the ancient Horn Dragon. All added together, it is comparable to 2 power of the ancient Azure Dragon plus 2 or 3,000 power of the ancient Horn Dragon. A slightly stronger Martial Emperor realm 7th level martial artist would exert even greater power, potentially reaching his level. He almost cannot be in existence below the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. Looking at the youth in purple robes before him, the old man guessed inwardly. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's gaze was firmly locked onto the old man, and he could tell that the man hadn't lied just now. Martial Emperor realm 4th level escorting the flying boat. That seems about right, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. In a first-rate faction, although Martial Emperor experts are as numerous as clouds, both the Martial Emperor realm 4th level and the Martial Emperor realm 7th level are major thresholds that are difficult to cross. As for being mistaken by the old man for an existence at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level, he wasn't surprised. Even among genuine Martial Emperor realm 7th level martial artists, if they didn't use a spiritual artifact, there were few who could surpass him in terms of power exerted. In your Yin-Yang sect, how many are at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level? Duan Lingtian looked at the old man and asked directly. This time, he was taking the flying boat across the weak water river to reach the inland. Once he arrived at the Yin-Yang sect, he intended to force his way in and take his 2 fiancées away. In this process, clashing with the experts of the Yin-Yang sect was inevitable. Therefore, asking the old man this now was also so he could be mentally prepared and understand the strength of the Yin-Yang sect beforehand. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the old man couldn't help but be startled. He obviously hadn't expected Duan Lingtian to ask this suddenly, but he still answered truthfully. As far as I know, in our Yin-Yang sect, there are not many existences at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. They can be counted on one hand. Among them, on our Yang Peak, the Peak Master and the 2 Vice Peak Masters are all at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level, and there is also a Protector Elder. Additionally, on the Yin Peak, the Peak Master and the 2 Vice Peak Masters are also all at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. Those 7 are the only ones I know of, the old man said slowly. 7 existences at or above the Martial Emperor realm 7th level. While Duan Lingtian murmured softly, a sharp light flashed in his eyes, and he then asked, is there any existence at the Martial Emperor realm 9th level? That I do not know. I only know those 7 are all at the Martial Emperor realm 7th level, and among them, the Yang Peak Master and the Yin Peak Master are the strongest, the old man said. Duan Lingtian nodded. Senior, do you have any more questions? If not, I shall head back first. The old man took a deep breath and looked at Duan Lingtian. His expression mixed with a bit of anxiety. If the other party wanted to kill him, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough. Duan Lingtian nodded indifferently. Whoosh. Having received Duan Lingtian's consent, the old man showed a look of excitement. With a shift of his body, he soared into the air, heading straight toward the banks of the weak water river, while Duan Lingtian seemed to still be pondering and thinking about something. Swish! A fleeting sound of a whistling sword rang out, breaking the silence in Duan Lingtian's ears, causing him to be startled awake instantly and look toward the source of the sound. The scene before him made Duan Lingtian pause in surprise. He saw the old man who was supposed to have left, his body pierced through by a sword, completely devoid of life. Wish! A figure like a fire spirit arrived before the old man in an instant. With a grab of her slender jade hand through the air, she took the old man's storage ring. The profundity fragment inside the old man's body was no exception. After taking the storage ring and profundity fragment, the fire spirit-like figure moved again, heading straight for Duan Lingtian. At the same time, the old man's corpse fell through the air. In an instant, Duan Lingtian only felt a wave of scorching heat rushing toward him, but he had no intention of dodging. Tian Wu, why did you kill him? Duan Lingtian looked down at the old man's corpse, which was getting further away and about to hit the ground, and asked somewhat blankly. I couldn't kill him. The figure like a fire spirit was indeed Feng Tianwu. As she handed the profundity fragment and storage ring to Duan Lingtian, a look of confusion appeared on her face. It's fine. If he's dead, he's dead. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he took the profundity fragment handed over by Feng Tianwu, looking completely unconcerned. Although he had said that as long as the old man's answers were satisfactory, he wouldn't kill him. The old man had been very cooperative, and his answers were quite satisfactory. However, it wasn't him who had made the move to kill the old man, but Tian Wu, and it wasn't on his orders either. Therefore, he hadn't broken his promise to the old man. Let's go. After calling out to Feng Tianwu, Duan Lingtian also called Xiong Quan, and they headed back toward the banks of the weak water river. Not long after, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 returned to the banks of the weak water river. Seeing the 3 return, the crowd by the weak water river all showed looks of wariness. After just one glance at the 3, they didn't dare look any longer. What a joke! Among these 3, even a mere follower was at the Martial Emperor realm. If they dared to stare, perhaps the other party would become displeased and kill them. If that really happened, they would truly have nowhere to go to cry about it. Duan Lingtian's gaze swept across the crowd before him, intending to find the 2 Yin-Yang sect members stationed by the weak water river. But in the end, he found nothing. No one gave themselves away. They really are careful. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Now, he also timely observed the surroundings and the sky above the weak water river, confirming that no one was hidden to the side. Everyone should be gathered here, including those 2 Yin-Yang sect disciples. Senior, thank you for the warning earlier. Soon, Duan Lingtian looked at one of the old men and thanked him via Yuan power sound condensation. However, the old man did not respond. Immediately, Duan Lingtian realized the old man had concerns, likely fearing being discovered communicating with him. For a time, Duan Lingtian intentionally or unintentionally moved to a spot not far from the old man, gave him a casual look, and communicated with him via Yuan power sound condensation. Even without my warning, you wouldn't have feared that gold-swallowing organization. It was just this old man meddling in things that weren't his business. The old man replied via Yuan power sound condensation, his tone mixed with a bit of a sigh. Senior, you're joking? I will keep your kindness in my heart. Duan Lingtian said via Yuan power sound condensation, his words coming from the bottom of his heart. Time passed quietly. Half a month went by quickly. During this period, the people of the gold-swallowing organization seemed to have vanished, which for a time made the crowd by the weak water river less constrained and increasingly lively. The flying boat is here. At some point, a startled cry rang out, alarming everyone present. Flying boat. Hearing the sound, Duan Lingtian had no interest and simply stood there with his eyes closed to rest. Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan's gazes, however, were completely drawn to it. To Duan Lingtian, who had fused the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor's 2 lifetimes, a flying boat was nothing new. Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan, however, were seeing one for the first time and were naturally amazed. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian seemed to be resting with his eyes closed, but he was actually circulating the 9th transformation of the 9 dragons' war venerable art, the serpent dragon transformation, to cultivate. He paid no heed to the growing whistle of wind. Under Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan's gaze, a tiny black dot first appeared in the distant sky, then rapidly grew larger, finally becoming a ship-like object. This is a flying boat. Watching the approaching ship-shaped object, surprise flickered in Xiong Quan's eyes. It doesn't look much different from an ordinary boat. Of course, only in appearance. An ordinary boat is far smaller. Whoosh. A moment later, the flying boat reached the banks of the weak water river, revealing its full form. Xiong Quan and Feng Tianwu looked it over. They saw the flying boat was made of some unknown special material. Without even touching it, they could tell it was extraordinary. Inside the boat were scattered seats. Some seats held groups of 3 or 5, others pairs. Are those the Yin Yang sect people who control the flying boat? Xiong Quan quickly focused on the 2 men standing fore and aft on the deck. Both were old men, and their mere standing posture gave Xiong Quan an intense sense of danger. Experts. The thought surfaced in Xiong Quan's mind at once. His intuition told him these 2 Yin Yang sect members were stronger than he was. Right then, whoosh, whoosh, 2 figures darted out from the crowd, arriving beside the flying boat in a flash. They greeted the 2 old men respectfully. Elder. After saluting, they huddled with the 2 elders in whispered conversation. They're Yin Yang sect too? They were standing right next to me earlier. I didn't notice at all. Many who had waited long on the riverbank exclaimed in surprise. After the hushed exchange between the 2 Yin Yang sect disciples, the 2 elders' expressions subtly darkened. At the same time, their eyes simultaneously fixed on a purple-clad figure in the distance. Is that the one who wiped out the gold-swallowing organization and seized the high-grade yuan stones that should have belonged to our Yin Yang sect? One elder murmured, a cold glint flashing through his eyes. We can't act here. If word got out that our Yin Yang sect allowed the gold-swallowing organization to operate, it would ruin our reputation. The other elder said, then we'll wait till we're back inland. Inside Yin Yang sect, the first elder spoke. Once he's in the sect, no matter how many high-grade yuan stones he's swallowed, we'll make him cough them all up. Don't underestimate him. His background can't be simple. Even a follower beside him is a martial emperor. The second elder cautioned. The one the 2 elders were staring at was naturally Duan Lingtian. Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan beside him also became the focus of their attention. 2 elders. Elder Huang still hasn't returned. I fear he's already fallen to them. A nearby Yin Yang sect disciple lowered his voice. If he'd simply handed over what belongs to our Yin Yang sect, all would be well. But he dared kill one of our elders. Once back at the sect, I'll make sure he never leaves. The 2 Yin Yang sect elders exchanged glances, seeing murderous resolve in each other's eyes. Young Miss Tianwu, did you notice those 2 old men keep glancing our way? Xiong Quan asked Feng Tianwu, eyeing the 2 Yin Yang sect elders warily. They come with ill intent. Frost seemed to veil Feng Tianwu's face as she parted her lips to speak, sparing with her words. Everyone, listen up. The flying boat departs in 1 hour. During this time, you may purchase a boarding token from these 2 men. One of the Yin Yang sect elders pointed to 2 disciples and announced in a resonant voice. His words instantly caused an uproar. When I bought a fake boarding token, your Yin Yang sect disciples were standing right there. Why didn't they warn me? I wasted 20 high-grade yuan stones. Many shouted in anger. When they first arrived, no one warned them. So the gold-swallowing organization had easily scammed them, each paying 20 high-grade yuan stones for counterfeit tokens. After realizing they'd been cheated, they had kept quiet, intimidated by the gold-swallowing organization's strength, and didn't warn newcomers either. But now, discovering that 2 Yin Yang sect disciples had stood among them all along and never offered a word of warning, they were furious. If your Yin Yang sect disciples had stepped in, would the gold-swallowing organization dare to operate so openly? Exactly. That's 20 high-grade yuan stones, not a small sum. Many people whispered and buzzed with indignation, glaring at the 4 from the Yin Yang sect. Humph! A cold snort drowned out their rising clamor. One of the Yin Yang sect elders stepped forward, the aura of a martial emperor expert sweeping out and crushing the crowd so they could barely breathe, let alone speak. You lot tried to save a few coins and got scammed. Who's to blame? Our Yin Yang sect flying boat charges 30 high-grade yuan stones per person, clearly posted, No trickery. Don't tell me you'd never heard. The Yin-Yang sect elder said coldly. At those words, the people who'd been duped earlier were instantly left speechless. Right, many of them, though it was their first time at the Weak Water River and first ride on a flying boat, had more or less heard of the fair beforehand. 30 high-grade yuan stones, clearly posted. But once they arrived and saw someone selling boarding tokens for only 20 high-grade yuan stones, the tokens looked convincing, and no one warned them. In the heat of the moment, thinking only of saving 10 yuan stones, they took the bait. Even if we were greedy, your Yin-Yang sect shouldn't let it happen. Your disciples were right there. Why didn't you warn us? You watched us get conned. Soon someone shouted in anger again. Warn you. Another Yin-Yang sect elder swept the speaker with an icy glance. If you hadn't been greedy, would you have been fooled? Refuse and they'd still pester you. Don't say every one of you was duped. Those who weren't cheated, who didn't buy fake tokens, were they harmed in any way? And do you think they'd have escaped unscathed without us? It's precisely because of the Yin-Yang sect's deterrent. Otherwise they'd be dead. And instead of losing 20 yuan stones, you'd have lost your lives. The elder spoke forcefully, leaving the crowd momentarily mute. It did seem to be the case. At once, some people meekly went to the two Yin-Yang sect disciples to buy boarding tokens, and soon more followed. Well played, Yin-Yang sect, openly turning a blind eye yet sounding so righteous. At some point, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, glanced at the 4 Yin-Yang sect members, and a cold smile tugged at his lips. Looks like these 2 old men already know we wiped out the gold-swallowing organization. He also noticed the 2 elders occasionally glancing their way, cold, killing intent flickering in their eyes, yet they still refrained from acting in public. They can actually hold back? Duan Lingtian was greatly surprised. After all, the Yin-Yang sect member who had tailed them to the gold-swallowing organization's lair had been killed by Tian Wu before he could report their strength to the rest of the sect. He'd only managed to send word through a message jade slip that they destroyed the organization. Thus, the 4 Yin-Yang sect members before them knew nothing of his power and weren't holding back out of fear of him. They were simply enduring. Perhaps with so many people present, they can't make a move. Once they do, it'll reveal that the Yin-Yang sect deliberately allowed the gold-swallowing organization to operate. All of this wasn't hard for Duan Lingtian to figure out. Xiong Quan, go buy 3 boarding tokens. Duan Lingtian looked at Xiong Quan, lifted his hand, and a storage ring appeared. After removing his blood recognition, he tossed it to him. I've put 1,000 high-grade yuan stones inside. Yes, young master. Xiong Quan answered respectfully, and went off to purchase the tokens from the 2 Yin-Yang sect disciples. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu stood side by side, watching the 4 from the Yin-Yang sect from afar. 2 Martial Emperor Realm 4th level experts. With that cultivation, they should count as elders within the Yin-Yang sect, right? Duan Lingtian mused inwardly. The other 2 looked familiar. They were in the crowd earlier, but they kept themselves well hidden. They should be the disciples who received the message jade slip. Both are Void Transformation Realm 9th level martial artists, most likely peak Void Realm existences. Duan Lingtian speculated quietly. Peak Void Realm experts, among 2nd or 3rd-rate forces on the Yunxiao continent, were considered important figures of no small status, especially in 3rd-rate forces. A peak Void Realm expert would be a leader-level character. Yet in a 1st-rate faction, such a martial artist could only count as a rather outstanding disciple, because Martial Emperor experts were as common as clouds. Without breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm, one couldn't even make the list. Moments later, Xiong Quan returned with 3 boarding tokens. On close inspection, they looked almost identical to the fakes. The boat boarding token sold by our Yin-Yang sect will display the characters Yin and Yang when Yuan force is injected into it. However, the fake boat boarding tokens you bought will not show this phenomenon. As many people took out their fake boat boarding tokens and compared them with the real ones, the Yin-Yang sect elder's voice rang out at the opportune moment. Immediately, many people began to test them. It really is. Soon, they discovered that, just as the Yin-Yang sect elder had said, only by injecting Yuan force into a real boat boarding token would the characters Yin and Yang appear on its surface. Injecting Yuan force into a fake boat boarding token, however, yielded no reaction at all. It seems the Yin-Yang sect likely has an inscription master at the Martial Emperor Realm 7th level or higher. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Previously, in the gold-swallowing organization's lair, The communication jade slip sent out by that yin-yang sect elder was so fast that even he found it difficult to catch up. At that time, he knew that communication jade slip came from an inscription master with an extremely high level of mental energy. Otherwise, the communication jade slip wouldn't have been so fast. Now, seeing the boat boarding token that displayed yin and yang, when Yuan force was injected, Duan Lingtian was completely certain. The boat boarding token was precisely because a special inscription array was inscribed and arranged on it, which, once Yuan force was injected, would display characters or patterns according to the inscription array's outline. This kind of inscription array can only be inscribed by an inscription master whose mental energy level has reached the Martial Emperor realm's 7th level or higher. It was precisely because of this that Duan Lingtian could determine that the Yin-Yang sect had such an inscription master. An hour later, a group of people, including Duan Lingtian, successively handed their boat boarding tokens to the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders. After the latter verified them, they boarded the flying boat one by one. It is worth mentioning, when it was Duan Lingtian's turn, the Yin-Yang sect elder's gaze towards Duan Lingtian was clearly filled with ill will, as if he wished he could directly attack Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this. Moreover, he could tell that the other party would not attack him for now. Perhaps they want to wait until we arrive at the inland, at the Yin-Yang sect, before making a move on me. If he were the other party, he would also plan this way. Duan Lingtian and his 2 companions boarded the flying boat one after another and took seats in groups of 3 to 5 at the innermost part of the flying boat. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu sat closely together, inside. Xiong Quan, being sensible, sat in the outer position. This spot is good. Duan Lingtian straightened his chest and raised his head, clearly taking in the weak water river. The weak water river was boundless, like stagnant water, without the slightest ripple, extremely calm. However, Duan Lingtian was very clear in his heart. Behind the calm surface of this weak water river lurked murderous intent. In the inner parts of the weak water river, the water surface would become increasingly unstable, and the gravitational and pulling forces would increase, making it difficult for people to fly steadily through the air. Martial artists with low cultivation who forcefully crossed the weak water river would ultimately only have one outcome: exhaustion and falling into the river. Once they fell into the river, there was only one end: death. A quarter of an hour later, everyone except for 2 Yin-Yang sect disciples had boarded the flying boat. The old man who had previously warned Duan Lingtian and later dared not greet him was now also sitting near Duan Lingtian and his 2 companions. Young brother, I'm truly sorry just now. I was also worried that some of the people earlier might have been gold-swallowing organization informants. The old man looked at Duan Lingtian and said with an apologetic expression, everyone fears death, and he was no exception. The reason he dared to warn Duan Lingtian earlier was that everyone was looking in Duan Lingtian's direction at that time, so he wasn't worried about being discovered. It's fine. Duan Lingtian shook his head, indicating that he didn't mind. Rise. At this moment, a loud shout came. It was one of the Yin-Yang sect elders who shouted loudly, and then the other Yin-Yang sect elders standing at the front of the flying boat began to get busy. The flying boat required someone to control it to start. Whoosh. As soon as the Yin-Yang sect elder's voice fell, the flying boat ascended into the sky. After accumulating momentum for a while, it shot into the air above the weak water river like an arrow released from a bowstring. The moment the flying boat entered the air above the weak water river, it suddenly trembled and rapidly descended. What's going on? Is there something wrong with the flying boat? We can't be this unlucky, can we? For a time, many people cried out in alarm. A moment later, the flying boat stabilized and slowly ascended, allowing many people to let go of their suspended hearts. This weak water river has such strong gravity. Immediately after, those who were still somewhat shaken by the fright sighed with emotion. That's natural. If the weak water river didn't have strong gravity and its waters weren't deadly, why would we spend 30 high-grade yuan stones for nothing to ride this flying boat? Some people, who had been calm throughout and were clearly not riding a flying boat across the weak water river for the first time, said as a matter of course. Everyone nodded upon hearing this. Young brother, is this your first time riding a flying boat? The old man, who was still somewhat shaken by the fright, looked at Duan Lingtian and asked. Although he had also been frightened just now, he had been facing Duan Lingtian and his 2 companions the entire time, and he had clearly taken in their expressions. Among the three, only this youth in purple robes showed no reaction, as if he had long known that the flying boat would plummet. It's my first time riding, but someone told me that I would encounter this situation, Duan Lingtian said. The old man suddenly understood. Then seeing Duan Lingtian close his eyes to rest, he sensibly refrained from speaking further to disturb him. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes and cultivated quietly. 9 dragons, war venerable art, divine dragon transformation. I still have half a year. With the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill assisting me, breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm 3rd level is a certainty. Duan Lingtian cultivated for a while, and his heart grew somewhat impatient. Thinking of the plight of his 2 fiancées, he couldn't calm down at all. Impatient and angry emotions constantly spread, threatening to burst forth. It took a long while for him to suppress them. The after effects of the demonized by the demon sealing steel are too great. After calming down, Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly. The last time, in the gold-swallowing organization's lair, upon learning of his 2 fiancées' current predicament, he instantly became furious, an uncontrollable rage. At that time, he immediately grabbed the Yin-Yang sect elder's neck. If his rationality hadn't suppressed his anger as much as possible, he would have strangled the old man to death then and there, and the old man wouldn't have even waited to be killed by Feng Tianwu. However, even if I can break through to the Martial Emperor realm 3rd level, I may not be able to overpower the various experts of the Yin-Yang sect, especially the Yang Peak Master. As one of the strongest existences in the Yin-Yang sect, his strength is at least at the Martial Emperor realm 8th level. Duan Lingtian's thoughts rapidly shifted, constantly pondering. According to the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, in his era, many first-rate factions had 9th level Martial Sovereign Realm experts. That Yin-Yang sect's Yang Peak Master might even be a 9th level Martial Sovereign Realm expert. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian secretly took a deep breath. If the other party truly was a 9th level Martial Sovereign Realm expert, it would be unlikely for him to possess the strength to overpower them within these 6 months. Unless my fusion profundity can break through, and can, like Emperor Realm profundity, increase the power of the ancient Azure Dragon upon breakthrough. Otherwise, I won't be his opponent. Duan Lingtian had self-awareness regarding this. It was precisely because of this that Duan Lingtian felt immense pressure, making him somewhat breathless. Cultivate, comprehend. Taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian, who had managed to calm his restless mood with great difficulty, once again began to cultivate quietly, holding 3 natural profound truth fragments in his hand to comprehend and improve his fusion profundity. The Tao comprehension originating from the character sword, in his mind, was also being comprehended every moment. Now, he urgently wanted to improve his strength. If his strength was insufficient, even if he reached the inland, reached the Yin-Yang sect, he might not be able to rescue his 2 little girls from the sea of fire. He has something on his mind. Feng Tianwu, sitting quietly beside Duan Lingtian, also noticed Duan Lingtian's abnormality at this moment. However, she was sensible enough not to disturb him, merely guarding silently by his side. The flying boat was very fast, and gusts of swift wind came head-on. But these strong winds were all resisted by the light shield propped up on the flying boat's surface, unable to affect the people on board. The light shield was formed by a defense array. As time passed, the people on the flying boat successively began to close their eyes and cultivate, causing the entire flying boat to fall into a state of tranquility. At the front of the flying boat, because the flying boat was in normal flight, the Yin-Yang sect elder also became idle. He exchanged glances with the other Yin-Yang sect elder standing at the rear of the flying boat. Then both looked at Duan Lingtian. In the depths of their eyes, a terrifying killing intent was clearly present. Now, they wished they could throw Duan Lingtian directly off the flying boat. However, they dared not do so. Doing so would satisfy them, but it would also cause fear among others. In the future, if this matter were to spread, it was likely that no one would dare to ride their Yin-Yang sect's flying boat again. A month passed quickly. The journey was smooth, without any incidents. Occasionally, some small flying boats passed by, stopping nearby for a moment before leaving again. More than 90% of the people inside the small flying boats were bandits roaming the Weakwater River. However, these bandits had keen eyesight and generally wouldn't provoke existences they couldn't afford to offend. For example, few bandits dared to actively provoke the Yin-Yang sect's flying boat. Upon seeing it, they would avoid it from afar. Of course, it was only that few bandits dared to actively provoke it. In the weak water river, among the bandits, experts were as numerous as clouds, and bandits with strength at the Martial Emperor realm 4th level or higher were not uncommon. Such bandits, even if they encountered the Yin-Yang sect's flying boat, would not let it go. In fact, to them, the Yin-Yang sect's flying boat was a fat sheep, and each robbery could yield a large amount of high-grade yuan stones. These ruthless bandits sometimes even deliberately target and rob the Yin-Yang sect's flying ships. It was precisely out of fear of these ruthless bandits that, every now and then, the Yin-Yang sect elders standing at the front of the flying ship would maneuver it to change direction, avoiding a straight path. This greatly enhanced safety. Of course, this didn't mean it was foolproof. Sometimes, if luck was bad, anything could happen. Time quietly flowed by. Another half-month passed, and the flying ship had already covered half its journey, needing only another month and a half to reach the inner land. Seeing half the journey completed smoothly, the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect breathed a sigh of relief. However, before they could fully relax, their expressions suddenly changed again, and their gazes simultaneously shot towards the direction the flying ship was heading. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A series of piercing whistles came from the front of the flying ship, growing closer and closer. This was the source of the two Yin-Yang sect elders' change in expression. Bandits. In a flash of lightning, the two Yin-Yang sect elders exchanged glances and uttered the two words in unison. Their voices were not deliberately suppressed, and in the quiet flying ship, they sounded exceptionally loud, instantly waking up most of the passengers. After being startled awake, these people were initially somewhat bewildered, but when they realized what was happening, their expressions changed. What? Bandits. Bandits. They had encountered bandits on the Weak Water River. They had heard of the bandits of the Weak Water River before. They were far more formidable than the ordinary bandits of the Inner Land and Outer Land, and some were even Martial Emperor realm powerhouses. Soon, the awakened people looked towards the front of the flying ship, where they could see several small dark specks continuously enlarging and heading straight for them. Xiong Quan was also awakened by the noisy sounds. When he realized what had happened, his expression also became serious. We're on a Yin-Yang sect flying ship. Surely the bandits wouldn't dare provoke us, right? Both elders are Martial Emperor realm existences. Even if they do provoke us, it's not certain that we'll be the ones to suffer losses. It's rare to cross the Weak Water River. To encounter bandits is almost a complete experience. Many people whispered amongst themselves. These people were all first-time passengers crossing the Weak Water River on a flying ship, full of confidence in the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect, not believing anything bad would happen to them. Now, they were somewhat anticipating, looking forward to seeing the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect slaughter and repel the bandits. You are truly naive. Hearing the words of these greenhorns, some people who had crossed the Weak Water River on a flying ship more than once snorted. Didn't you see how the two elders' expressions changed? Do you think those bandits wouldn't recognize that the flying ship we're on belongs to the Yin-Yang sect? The bandits of the Weak Water River are all shrewd. If they weren't confident, do you think they would make a move? As soon as this person finished speaking, everyone on the flying ship who had woken up looked in unison at the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When they saw the grim expressions on the faces of the two Yin-Yang sect elders, their own expressions changed again, realizing that the bandits at the front of the flying ship indeed meant trouble. Even the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect have changed their expressions, clearly lacking confidence in dealing with these bandits. What should we do? I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Why did I even think of going to the inner land for no reason? Now, it looks like I'm going to lose my life here. Immediately, the entire flying ship descended into chaos, most people's faces changing drastically, their eyes filled with terror, as if the end of the world had arrived. In such a noisy environment, even those deeply engrossed in cultivation were awakened. Among them were Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tian Wu, and the old man sitting not far from Duan Ling Tian and the other two. The old man who had kindly warned Duan Ling Tian earlier by the Weak Water River. Bandits? Even the two elders of the Yin-Yang sect aren't confident. Soon, including Duan Ling Tian, a group of people who had just been startled awake learned of their perilous situation. Little brother, it seems we are doomed here today. The old man looked at Duan Ling Tian, saying with a mournful face. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed, but he didn't speak, immediately looking towards the front of the flying ship. With just one glance, he saw 7 small flying ships whistling towards them, positioning themselves at the front, back, and around their flying ship, completely surrounding it. Friends of the Yin-Yang sect, listen, stop your flying ship immediately. Otherwise, we will destroy your ship and kill everyone on board. At this moment, a loud voice came from a small flying ship at the front, its tone filled with coldness, as if emanating from an ice cave, making people's hearts palpitate. No, no. Immediately, the Yin-Yang sect's flying ship was once again in a panic. Humph! A cold snort came, suppressing the noisy sounds on the scene. It was the Yin-Yang sect elder at the front of the flying ship who snorted, while simultaneously beginning to control the flying ship. A moment later, the flying ship slowed down until it came to a complete stop. As soon as the flying ship stopped, it experienced another free-fall movement, plummeting through the air, startling many people on board. Only when the flying ship stopped its descent did their expressions ease. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After the flying ship stabilized, a series of swift whistling sounds came, and figures appeared at the front, back, and sides of the flying ship. They were a group of people dressed in black tight-fitting attire. These people included both old and middle-aged individuals. It's you again. As the people on the flying ship were on high alert, the 2 elders of the Yin-Yang sect changed their expressions and simultaneously exclaimed in surprise. As soon as the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders spoke, many people on the flying ship breathed a sigh of relief. Listening to the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders, it was clear they had encountered these bandits before. Since the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders were still alive, it meant these bandits were incapable of killing them. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, watching the scene before him with interest. He was also quite curious. Why did these 2 Yin-Yang sect elders recognize this group of bandits? 2 elders, after half a year, we meet again. I must say, we are truly fated. Among the group of bandits standing at the edge of the flying ship, a black-clad old man standing at the front looked at the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders and said with a faint smile, "Who's fated with you?" The 2 Yin-Yang sect elders' expressions were very grim. Half a year ago, the 3 of us fought the 2 elders. Although we had a slight advantage over the 2 elders, if we continued, even if we could kill the 2 elders, we would definitely suffer losses on our side. As if seeing the confusion of the Yin-Yang sect flying ship's occupants, the black-clad old man said faintly, "That time, we reached an agreement. You would give us 1,000 high-grade origin stones, and we would leave on our own. This time, I won't be greedy. Still 1,000 high-grade origin stones. How about it?" The black-clad old man finished speaking and looked at the 2 elders of the Yin-Yang sect. At this point, everyone also understood why the 2 elders of the Yin-Yang sect had encountered these bandits before and not died. It turned out it was because they had paid a toll fee. As if to cooperate with the words of the black-clad old man leading them, the other 2 old men beside him suddenly released 2 powerful auras, pressing down on most of the people on the flying ship, making them unable to breathe. Martial Emperor powerhouses. Immediately, except for Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tian Wu, everyone on the flying ship changed their expressions. And not just ordinary Martial Emperor powerhouses. Among the people on the flying ship, there were not a few with keen insight, and their expressions were exceptionally grim. The 2 elders of the Yin-Yang sect's expressions grew even uglier, but for a moment, they did not answer the bandit leader's words. Their gazes involuntarily fell to the back of the flying ship. To be precise, they fell upon a purple-clad young man, Duan Ling Tian. For a moment, the bandit leader also looked at Duan Ling Tian with interest, a glint flashing in his eyes. Why are the 2 elders looking at me? Since we can avert disaster by spending money, why bother fighting to the death? Seeing the 2 Yin-Yang sect elders looking at him, Duan Ling Tian grinned. There are about 70 of us, and each of us paid 30 high-grade origin stones to ride this flying ship, totaling about 2,000 high-grade origin stones. 1,000 high-grade origin stones is only half of the origin stones you collected on this trip. Duan Ling Tian finished speaking in one breath. Duan Ling Tian's words were acknowledged by most people on the flying ship. They nodded in agreement, deeply empathizing. The 2 Yin-Yang sect elders originally wanted to discuss with Duan Ling Tian whether they could jointly deal with this group of bandits, but they never expected Duan Ling Tian to say such words. For a moment, They were so angry their lungs nearly burst, although they did not believe that Duanling Tian and his group were stronger than them. However, since Duanling Tian and his group had the strength to annihilate the Gold Devourer organization, if they joined forces, they might be able to overpower the group of bandits in front of them. What they never expected was that Duanling Tian would be so spineless. The bandit leader had originally looked at Duanling Tian with apprehension. At such a critical moment, someone who could draw the attention of both Yin-Yang sect elders was surely no simple character. But when he heard Duanling Tian's words, he couldn't help but laugh heartily. This little brother is sensible. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. The two elders should really learn from this little brother, the bandit leader said, and by the end, he gave the two Yin-Yang sect elders a deep look. This infuriated the two of them so much they almost wanted to vomit blood. Since I'm so sensible, shouldn't you give us a discount? For example, how about 50 fewer high-grade origin stones? Duanling Tian looked at the bandit leader and asked with a slight smile. Presumptuous. Immediately, many bandits around them changed their expressions and shouted angrily. Kid, you dare to bargain with our leader. Do you have a death wish? As the group of bandits became agitated, the bandit leader raised his hand, causing the group of bandits to quiet down. Interesting. The bandit leader and Duanling Tian looked at each other for a moment. The smile that had disappeared from his face reappeared. Then, for your sake, little brother, I'll take 50 fewer high-grade origin stones. Thank you. Duanling Tian nodded, then closed his eyes again, no longer paying attention to his surroundings, unsure if he was resting or cultivating.